The laughter came too easily in that marble hallway, the kind that assumes it already knows the ending, and it echoed off gold-trimmed pillars as a tired man in a thrift store jacket stood there with his shoulders squared and his son's inhaler heavy in his pocket. Somewhere between the crystal chandelier and the billionaire's private guard smirking at him, Michael Carter realized how quickly the world decided who you were worth listening to, and how little room it left for explanation. What would you do if every step you took for your child made people see you as the wrong man, the mistake, the inconvenience, before you ever opened your mouth? Michael had not planned to be there that night. His life was usually measured in school pickup times, late utility bills, and the quiet panic that came when his son Joshua's breathing grew tight in the early hours of morning. He had been a construction worker once, proud of calloused hands and honest exhaustion, until a fall shattered his knee and his confidence in equal measure. Since then, he pieced together work when he could and patched the rest with stubborn hope. The invitation to the charity gala at the Harrington Hotel came from a volunteer he barely knew, someone who heard his story at a free clinic and mentioned a foundation that sometimes helped families like his. Michael showed up because desperation can dress itself as courage when a child is involved. The guard assigned to the ballroom doorway saw none of that. He saw men whose shoes were scuffed, whose posture carried strain instead of polish, and whose eyes were too alert for someone who belonged among polished donors and champagne flutes. The guard laughed when Michael said he was there for the foundation office upstairs, laughed in a way that invited the others nearby to share the joke. Michael felt the heat climb his neck, felt that familiar fork in the road inside him where silence battled dignity. If this happened to you, would you shrink and leave, or would you risk humiliation by standing your ground for something that mattered more than pride? The laughter stirred memories Michael kept buried. Years earlier, in a different uniform and a different country, laughter had sounded like disbelief before chaos broke loose. He had learned then that underestimating the quiet men was a luxury some people never survived. He had learned to keep his sleeves down afterward, to hide what the world might misunderstand or fear. But tonight, with Joshua's future hanging like a thin thread, something in him shifted. Slowly, deliberately, he rolled up his sleeve. The room seemed to tilt as the guard's smile faltered. Ink and scars traced Michael's forearm, not decorative, not fashionable, but a map of survival and service that told a story without words. The laughter died because recognition replaced it, the sudden awareness that the men being dismissed carried weight no one had bothered to ask about. Michael did not feel triumph, only a tired sadness that it took visible proof of pain for respect to appear. Change came not with raised voices but with a subtle tightening of the air, a correction made too late to erase the earlier cruelty. Security cleared the way in awkward silence, and Michael found himself ushered upstairs, past doors that promised influence and answers. He sat alone for a long time in a small office while the sounds of the gala drifted up like a different world. His thoughts wandered to Joshua asleep at home with a neighbor watching over him, to the nights Michael counted breaths instead of sheep. He wondered how many parents had stood where he stood, judged before heard, and whether kindness could ever be taught to come first. The foundation director eventually arrived, a woman named Ruth with lines around her eyes that spoke of hard decisions and softer regrets. She listened as Michael explained his situation, not with pleading but with the calm honesty of someone who had nothing left to embellish. He spoke of his fall, his lost work, his son's condition, and the way systems seemed designed to exhaust hope before offering help. Ruth did not interrupt. When he finished, she surprised him by rolling up her own sleeve, revealing a faded hospital band scar, and told him quietly that foundations existed because life humbled everyone eventually. Help did not come as a miracle but as a process. Forms were filled, calls were made, and expectations were managed. Michael left that night with no check in his hand, only a promise of review and a strange lightness in his chest. Downstairs, the guard avoided his eyes, shame radiating louder than laughter ever had. Michael nodded anyway, not in forgiveness or anger, but in understanding. He knew too well how fear dressed itself as arrogance. Weeks passed, and the foundation came through with assistance that kept Joshua's treatment steady and the lights on. Michael found part-time work mentoring young veterans, using stories he once tried to forget to help others find footing. The memory of that night stayed with him, not as vindication, but as a reminder of how easily people were reduced to appearances, and how quietly resilience waited beneath worn fabric. One afternoon, Michael returned to the Harrington Hotel, not for charity but for work, invited to speak to a small group about perseverance. As he stood in the same hallway, he caught his reflection in the polished marble, saw men still tired but no longer shrinking. He thought about the guard, about Ruth, about Joshua's laughter filling their small apartment now that fear had loosened its grip. He thought about the countless wrong men and women dismissed every day, carrying invisible histories that might change everything if only someone paused to look. Life did not become easy, but it became honest. Michael learned that rolling up his sleeve was not about proving strength to others, but about accepting his own story without apology. He learned that kindness, when finally offered, had a way of multiplying, reaching places pride never could. And he learned that sometimes the most powerful thing a person could do was stand still long enough for the truth to surface, even when laughter tried to drown it out. Before this story ends, take a moment to comment and share what part of Michael's journey stayed with you the most. If this story truly touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe, and carry its reminder with you that the wrong man might just be the one who changes everything when given a chance.